It's another Human First AI Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Avenue 9. You can find us at avenue9.com. We made it easy. We help small and medium-sized businesses punch above their weight with their marketing by using AI and some outsourced CMO, fractional CMO services to help you crush it in your marketing. I have a very special guest this week. Noelle Russell is an AI expert. She's led teams at IBM, Amazon, all kinds of cool places, Accenture, and she's written a best-selling book called Scaling Responsible AI and has been an AI award winner leading the community for people, Noelle. And I think they could just go to noelle.ai is the best way to find all of the cool stuff.
Yeah, I loved what you said. We try to make it easy.
Tell us about the AI Leadership Institute first, because I think this is a really cool project.
Absolutely. And it, of course, started, I always say, in marketing the same way, right? We go and we help small businesses and we basically look at who that owner was 5 years ago, and that's kind of their best market, right? So my business, AI Leadership Institute, was built because 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of people trying to help me do what I needed to do. And that was specifically, I got an early invitation to join a brand new product called Amazon Alexa. And nobody knew AI, and I was an engineer at heart, so I wasn't a data scientist, but there was no community. There was no safe place for me to ask questions, especially the ones I thought were dumb. So I was kind of like on my own in, rummaging through GitHub and trying to pick up technology. And so I realized, I was like, you know what, it would be really fun to actually curate my own community of people, create my own safe space. And that's how it started. But today we have trained over 3.4 million people across the world, and we do it by really educating people on, we always say we go from the boardroom to the whiteboard to the keyboard. So we think it's important for you to know what AI looks like as a leader of your company, but it's also important to know what AI looks like in architecting solutions and implementing innovation, all the way down to the people who are going to answer your phones. Or will it be people answering your phones? Maybe we'll talk about that. But how do you implement AI throughout your entire company organization? And how do you avoid hiring people if you don't have to, right? How do you scale your business by just using technology to amplify your scale?
I love that. And Noelle has a huge following on LinkedIn and other platforms and stuff too. As she mentioned, lots of people, and you have lots of experience in these big companies. And so when you're writing about responsible AI or thinking about kind of ethical, even inclusive or safe AI for people, I think I don't want you to talk specifically about your experience because you worked at Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, companies like that. But how much do you think we should be worried about this? Because I kind of feel like all the cards, at least with AI like development, is being held by like 4 or 5 companies. I think a lot of people are doing really cool things for small business, and you should just jump in and like go get it. So I think when you're talking about like keyboard stuff, I feel it's totally safe telling a small business like, hey, go use it for your marketing, write some stuff, go make some things and whatever. But when I talk about the big boardroom stuff, I get nervous about that. Are you nervous or are you optimistic?
Well, I mean, as maybe this audience will eventually come to know me, I am pretty optimistic in general. So I am a rational optimist, but for good reason. I got into the world of AI like 12 years ago with Amazon Alexa. I helped launch that product, and I did it. I was really driven because I have a son with Down syndrome, and he was 9 at the time. And I was really interested in a technology you could talk to, because I was like, oh my gosh, the only thing I have to do now is teach you how to talk. And then as long as there was an app on the other end listening to activate your banking information or your healthcare system or legal services, like as long as a company built a voice interface, he could do anything now, right? As long as he could communicate.
That's cool.
And that was really the promise of Alexa, of Google Assistant, and now even of ChatGPT. So that I think you're right. Like any business now can just activate AI in their company by just asking some questions. But what I always encourage you to do is kind of think, as we put on our responsibility hat, as we think about how might, I always actually have an analogy that I use. And I happen to have a little guy right here. And when I was at Microsoft, I managed all these little projects, and I would call them little baby tigers, because when you start using AI, and I'm sure you probably have had this feeling, you type in like, hey, help me write a 5 email nurture sequence for this campaign. And it's like, da, 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 and you're like, oh my God, this is pretty awesome. it's super cute, super fluffy. I love it. I want to keep it forever. But you're not really like, you don't look deeply into that. And you certainly aren't thinking about what happens when that grows up, right? What happens when it gets bigger? And so responsibility is really kind of giving yourself a little bit of room to pause the excitement, say, I love you, you're adorable, but how big are you going to be? Or, what do you eat, Data? How much do you eat? Where are you going to live? Like, this analogy helps you kind of enjoy the ride of the excitement of AI, but also take just 1 second and think, what's the worst thing that could happen with this, right? I don't want to be all dystopian, but I do think it's important to just ask one question, right? Where did you get that answer, little AI system? And what's the worst thing that could happen with this information? And I think those two questions are very rarely asked in the beginning because we're so enamored with the really cool five sequence email nurture series it wrote for us, because that was something that took us months, and maybe some of us did it because it was so hard.
So I think there's two interesting things there for me. One that you mentioned, I think I hit a lot on this podcast, is like, does it scale? Like, one person could use AI to scrape email addresses and spam the hell out of everybody, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But if 1 million businesses do that, that is a big deal. That tiger grows up, and it's going to be unwieldy. And I'm really afraid of that. So that's why this podcast is all about teaching people the human first side. How do we do something that does scale and make sense longer term? The other side of things, which I'm excited to talk to you about, is these kind of inclusive data sets, and especially in marketing, making sure that the data it's using is responsible, because I found that it writes a really good nurture sequence based on probability of like what will reach the most amount of people. But good marketing is targeted towards very specific groups. And then also, if you're looking at sort of majority rule, that leaves out a lot of people as well. So I think when you look at, that part of your tiger analogy, it becomes very interesting to me. And I haven't had those conversations yet. Can you tell me how you think about the data and where it's coming from, and whether we can trust that part or not?
Yeah. I think the maybe surprising part is that it's the one part that makes it human first, right? We, as the practitioner, with our lived experience, with our knowledge of the niche that we're going after, our knowledge of the customer, right? We actually control what that data looks like, what good looks like. A machine has no idea, to your point, right? I think a lot of people misinterpret that when they talk to ChatGPT, especially, and maybe this is the first lesson, right? When you talk to a model, if you're not paying to use that model, by default, you are paying with something, right? And typically I say, I will ask an audience, like, what are you paying with if you're not paying with money? And people will pop up things like your data. And I'll always be like, your soul, like literally everything.
Right.
Yeah. Everything in your,
certainly for social media and some of the other
stuff. Like your mind, your like every idea you've had, right? And that currency. So no matter what, when you're talking to an AI system, you are transacting in a currency, and that currency is either data or money. And in most cases, it's way cheaper to give them money than give them your data, because that data that you're giving, right, is the bloodline of your business. It's the knowledge that you have. So that being said, when you start using a model, it's really important to kind of flip the script, like that you aren't a consumer of an AI. You don't go to a random AI system and say, hey, write me an email, right? You're going to instead first start with what I call the 3 Ps of prompt engineering, right? The first thing you do with every single model is you tell it what its job is, right? What the purpose of it is, what the people looks like, right? Who your audience is. That's you. You, as the owner of the company, know more than most who your audience is. Like the model is, like you said, it's going to treat everybody the same. It's going to give you this super generic outcome. But if you tell it, no, I want you to do this with this purpose for these people, and if you're great, you're going to also tell it who it's not for, right? Who is this for? Who's it not for? And then the most important, right? So that's 2 Ps, people and purpose. The last P is the most important. What's the portfolio of data you want this AI model to use? And you're going to give it to the model. Don't let the model use its training data, because it's nonsense. It's the internet. I don't know if y'all know this, but like
The
4
internet
years
is
ago.
nonsense.
Right? Yeah. You could ask the model who the president was 4 years ago, and it could not clearly tell you, even though it was a fact, like it had happened. So the internet is not a good place to to be your source of truth. So that becomes your responsibility. And as a small business owner, I actually think this is a bit of our flex, is that the one thing we do as entrepreneurs is we have a problem we want to solve, and we know that problem really well. At least that's my commitment, right? Is that I've got a problem I want to solve for my customer, and I'm going to go after that unique customer with that unique solution, and I'm going to crush it, like you said. But the best way to do that is to train your models to have that same level of specificity.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And that's what I found has made the biggest difference, especially in marketing, but really in any prompt that you're doing. But in
Yeah.
marketing, you got to know what you stand for. You got to know who you're sending a communication to and the purpose of that communication, and then giving it all the relevant context to create something good for that message.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to shift a little bit because I saw a word on your website that got my attention. And again, it's Noelle.ai. But you have the word explainability as one of the key things to responsible AI. And I could see this as two ways. So if I had to guess, number one is I think we got to explain how AI works and just being able to understand what it is doing so we can understand how to use it best. But I also think that in responsible or ethical AI, you should be able to explain to your clients, your prospects, or your employees why you're doing this and what it did, and that it is in a human first sort of manner. Is that fair, or did you have something else on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give a very specific example. We were in a very large telecom, like a telecommunications company, and the CIO walks in, and this is like 2023, early days of generative AI. And we're like, we could solve all of these problems with generative AI. And he was like, sure, do all of that, but I want to be able to trace every single decision you made. And in telecom, right, they're basically a regulated industry, right? They're regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, the federal, whatever, FCC, FTC, all these people. And so they were worried about, like, hey, if we allow an AI system to do something and a customer comes back and says, hey, it did it or it didn't do it, and there's any kind of controversy, they will be held, and this is true, they would be held at fault or liable if they could not provide evidence otherwise. And so explainability, like you said, it's got a two-edged sword, if you will. One side of that is making sure that you are protected as an organization, that you know what your models are doing, and that you've intentionally guided them to do those things. So that if a customer comes up and says, hey, your AI model, I don't know if you know this story, but a Chevrolet dealership recently had to sell a truck for $1 because the chatbot negotiated down to $1 with a customer. And the
Nice.
company, the dealership was like, no, we are not responsible for that. That is not in our policy. I don't know where the AI got that. But they went to court and they lost, because at the end of the day, responsibility, you're responsible for that.
Yeah.
So this is why
There's a bunch of crazy examples of these, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts even on these edges, because you've mentioned a few already. I think they're fun. One, a Tesla self-driving car got pulled over, and Waymo has as well. Who gets the ticket if
right.
if a self-driving Tesla makes an illegal U-turn?
Yeah.
Is it Tesla? Is it the person sitting in the back? If it's a taxi, like who?
Yeah, no, right? It would
What
be the
happens, right?
driver.
Who's responsible?
And in an autonomous driver, that's the data scientist. Imagine being a data scientist and one day getting like a flood of tickets for all you're like, what is happening right now?
That would be
Yeah,
really, Tesla's like, that's not on us. That's on our programmer. You can,
that's
you
exactly
can
it,
send
right?
it to
And
Jim.
then you realize, like, yeah, you really are never, like, there is no such thing as job security, because your company will lay that on top of you in a second.
Have you heard of any other things, or maybe some common things that small and medium-sized businesses should be thinking about with this? I think
Absolutely.
negotiating and chatbots and stuff is one that I hadn't really thought about before. But I think also the biggest thing is not thinking about what's leaking out. Basically, everything is training the model at
Right.
this point. Is that
Unless you
fair?
tell it otherwise, right? Unless you, like I said, you have to kind of flip your understanding and now never use a model you haven't trained yourself. And the good news is that every model can be trained. So that's the first,
Hmm.
note to write down, like every model can be trained. That means you have to go into the settings, and it's not code. You don't need to be an engineer. You don't even have to be technical. You just have to click on the settings. I do think you have to be the kind of person who reads the instructions. So that might be, that might set you apart.
Sometimes the terms and conditions are a lot to
Yeah,
read. We need an AI summary of the terms and conditions.
That's right. I actually created a company, whim over 2 years ago. And I was like, I'm going to call it, I think it was called Snap TOS. And the idea was that it would create you like instantaneous terms of service understanding using an LLM. Turns out, even if it's short, people don't want to read it.
It's true. Turns out people still don't care. Yeah.
But it does. That is again, part of your responsibility being an entrepreneur, being a business owner on behalf of not only your customers, but your employees, your stakeholders, is that you do have to get into this mode of changing from being a consumer of AI to being the producer, the trainer, the owner of that AI system. And so ChatGPT, you can own by just going into the settings first, paying $20 a month or 200 if you want to go big. But going into settings and saying, first, toggling off that you're going to train a public model with your data. Most people don't know that that's a choice that you make. And then the second thing is to go in and actually provide these instructions. We call them system instructions. So you can control the whole ChatGPT instance with words that you define. And they don't have to be super technical. As a matter of fact, sometimes I'll just go into ChatGPT and say, hey, help me write a system prompt that will control the generation of emails for this target audience in this segment for this campaign. And when I describe it that way, now it's going to create me a system prompt I can put right into ChatGPT. And now all my prompts are governed by that statement. It's extremely powerful. And so few business owners really know to do that. But the other thing I wanted to mention, the other slippery slope for business owners is typically that you want so desperately to get off your plate, kind of the customer side. And it literally, from an AI perspective, should be the last thing you do, right? These customer-facing chatbots, as you mentioned, there are hundreds of AI gone wrong stories with customer-facing chatbots. So I always say, start first by helping the helper. And it might be you that you're helping. But one of our most successful AI systems is we built a 4 LLM sequence. And its job, once you get a lead, its job is just to take that lead and send an SMS message and just be like, hey, just curious, are you still interested in the thing I sell? And when the customer or prospect says yes, go, great, ask a couple qualifying questions, store the qualification into your CRM, which I hope you have. And then from that CRM, only book calls on your calendar, right? And you do this all through an AI, and AI will only book calls on your calendar that have been qualified through the SMS exchange. Like, that stuff we don't want to do. We don't want to chase every lead. We don't want to message people who don't want to talk to us.
Right.
Like, it's our big gap. It's the friction. But if we know every sales call is with somebody who's already preemptively said, yeah, I want this, man, we actually like selling. Like, we love selling, as a matter of fact. But
I look at that with data
over.
and stuff too. Customers don't want you necessarily to scrape their data or buy data about them and sell stuff they don't want.
Yes.
But they do want personalized attention and service. And so
Exactly.
one of the things I do is, like, if I'm in a sales call or having a conversation with you, we can record this, have AI transcribe it, do the notes, put that in the CRM, or save it for follow-up, or even customize my pitch and proposal after this to exactly the stuff that we said in the meeting. That's something that makes it better. We all agreed that this was going to be recorded. We were using it to help both parties rather than just in a selfish, my side wants this more than the other, right?
Yeah. And it goes back to what you said, like, it aids in explainability, right? It just allows people to understand what's happening. And some of us are great listeners. Some of us are great listeners intermittently. And so it really does provide a much better experience overall. And that's just like one of the easiest use cases. I mean, exchange that to people who do back office work, who are looking at contract after contract. They miss things all the time just because they get tired, or they're ready for a break, or they need to go to lunch, or they're trying to get out early to watch their kids at a baseball game. Like, you can now use AI to amplify those people. Now, I do recognize, and I don't replace people with AI, because AI is not really great at autonomous work today.
Right.
And even in the future, I don't see that being the case, because no one knows what I know, right? No AI system is going to know what I know, because I am not going to tell it. So I think there's a real, understanding of our own worth in this, in a business. What's your best time spent doing? Like, what things should you be focused on? For me, it's talking to my customers, whether they're
Right.
already sold or whether I'm selling them. Everything else I can automate. Everything else I can leverage an AI system to do. Now, I think, I don't know if we'll talk about this later, but I've gotten some really interesting marketing use cases of like generating interest in brand building. So I'll wait to
Ooh.
see if we want to talk.
Well, we're going to tease those for 1 second because I had one
Yeah.
other hard question for you, and I agree with everything you just said. But I did want to specifically ask you in the responsibility area of like fairness and equity, because I feel like this
Oh,
is
yeah.
an age old question about democracy, right? When we have these predictability machines that kind of majority rules again. And so we've seen really dumb stuff as these tools take off, where, if you ask it to make a picture of a salesperson, it makes an old white guy. And if
Yes.
you ask it to make a picture of a tech person, you get a beard and a man bun on a white guy. And
Yeah.
so
For me,
that just is not very interesting. But then they tweak the settings a little bit and you ask it to make a picture of a Nazi and it makes it a minority
yeah.
because we're trying to
And they're like,
artificially
wait.
put stuff in. And you're like, that's not right either. So how have you seen us grow up, in this as the tools get better, or are there still things that we need to look out for as far as fairness in what we're generating or creating?
Yeah, so there's actually a really great term. So there's what right now most of us are in what I call kind of day one of AI. It's like baby tiger mode, right? Where you're building with a model, it's creating cute, nice outcomes. You're pretty satisfied with what it's doing, but it's not really at production scale, right? You're not using it for every customer, you're not using it for every use case. As you approach production scale, three things tend to happen. I call it SAT. The first thing is that you run into security vulnerabilities, right? So when you
Mm,
look at like the 95% of projects that are failing right now, they all have one, like either security, or the second one is accuracy, right? Like you said, like how does it know what truth is? Or the final one is trust. I think an interesting fact about artificial intelligence right now is that some research was just recently done on all the projects that are in progress. And they said 95% of projects were failing. But the reason, like there were 5 or 6 reasons, none of them were technical. But the one that had the longest tail was actually a hesitancy of customers, employees, and staff to even use the AI. And so
yeah.
the reason these AI systems were failing was because people were not using them. And I think that's a big part of kind of like thinking through between day one when you get started and day two when you're actually using this like interwoven into the DNA of your business. How are you going to make sure that you do it in a way that's secure, which means you honor the data privacy of your customers, your employees, and your company? How do you make sure it's right and accurate, right? That's a huge, and that is all you. Like as a human, that is the human first approach is you own what truth is. The model doesn't know. It's going to do what you tell it. And if you don't tell it, it's going to default to the internet, which we talked about. That's not truth either. So it's our responsibility to tell the truth. And only then do we build a system people can trust. But that work, security, accuracy, and trust, is often done by a team. And I give this to you so you can go look it up if you want to, but it's
Yeah.
called AI red teaming. And this is like an
Okay.
actual team of people. But what I love about this team is that they're not engineers, they're not data scientists. They are extremely diverse and inclusive individuals, all walks of life. So at Amazon Alexa, for example, when we were building Alexa in the early days, I was the only mom on the team. I was also the only caregiver taking care of my dad on the team. So I had a very different perspective. But as a result, I built different stuff. I built mindfulness apps and kindness apps and prayer apps. And everyone told me I was crazy on my team. They're like, nobody needs mindfulness in the kitchen. This is dumb. Why are you even doing it? Until 2 million people showed up and used my skill and I ranked to the top of the list. And they're like, oh, I guess people. So this is why when you're
Yeah.
building an AI system, you need different people with different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, some with education, some without education, moms, cat owners, dog owners, like as many diverse perspectives as possible, because they're going to push you to develop capability in your AI systems that you haven't thought of, that you won't think of, because it's not even in your brain to contemplate. And that's what I think we're starting to see in these models that end up being unfair, unjust, that are sexist, racist, hurt people on purpose, is because when they were tested, they tested it with all people that kind of thought the same way. And when you think the same way, nobody even thinks to ask a question about racism because they're
Right.
not thinking about racism. So you need people who are kind of willing and brave enough and courageous enough to kind of ask those hard questions to prove that the model can scale with all of those considerations in place.
That's a really great answer. I appreciate that thoughtfulness, and yeah, I hope more people hear that it's usually not malicious, it's ignorant, and that you just didn't
Yes,
even think to ask those questions or check
yes.
those settings before you did it. And that's why the team has to be there, because you're not going to think about
That's
that.
right.
That's not
And
in
there is some good
your
news though. There is a tool available. So as the technology has evolved, Microsoft, for example, built an AI red teaming agent. And so its job is it's an LLM and it basically investigates every request to look for these things. So that's the good news of like,
We're
waiting a
getting
little
there.
bit.
We're growing
Is
up a
that
little bit.
yeah. These technologies, there's AI red teaming, content safety. There's all these LLMs that are popping up to actually help you do this work. And they partner with you. Again, you're still the human saying, I want to do this. But now you have other AI systems that actually can help you weed through every request into your model and find out, is there anything, unscrupulous happening and how do you stop that before it impacts your business in a negative way?
Awesome. Now back to the marketing stuff. I have two more questions for you. The next one is marketing. What cool use cases have you seen? And then where do you see marketing going in the next, 3 to 5 years? I feel like the transformation has begun, but still very
Absolutely.
early in this.
Yeah, well, and I think that is also a human tendency, right? I do think that we could be using AI a lot more, but I think copywriters specifically are a little hesitant, even though it can amplify. I mean, there's not enough copywriters in the world, in my opinion. So do more. More is more. But I think a lot of marketers are a little hesitant to go all in on AI because there's this back of the brain concern that there's a livelihood impact, right? Like if
Yeah.
this does all of that, then who am I? What do I do? Even though I, as a practitioner, I mean, I have like 32 AI employees, I
Hmm.
still, I still don't have enough time in the day. Like I have just done more, increased the value in the things that I get to do. But that being said, as a marketer, I think, one of my favorite use cases I saw the other day, there's on Instagram, and I'm sorry for all of you listening because now this guy's going to show up on your Instagram feed now that I'm mentioning. If your phone's anywhere nearby, you'll be retargeted. But it's this little Asian guy, and he gives Asian wisdom. And it's like what to eat, vitamins, like how much water to drink, what temperature the water. Every day it's a little chunk of wisdom. Now, I know what I know. I have a whole viral series of how to detect deep fakes on TikTok. And so I created, so I know how to detect a deep fake. And it wasn't the first time. It was only the third time that I saw this guy that I was like, oh, he is not real. But it didn't even matter. Like, and that's, I think,
Yeah.
the thing that we all need to realize is that in 3 to 5 years, it won't matter. People are going to want good content, and it won't matter that it's not a real person, which means it doesn't have to be your face. Like I literally went on Instagram that day. When I found out it was fake, I was like, I'm going to build a fake version of like a Noelle person. And so I created this super cute. It's got glasses, curly hair, but doesn't wear it down, wears it in a bun like me 10 years ago, hoodie, technology background. And she just gives cool ideas all the time. So it's kind of like what would have reserved in social media for text-based posts.
Right.
Now I actually see us again, should you choose to accept the challenge, building an avatar to represent that concept, that philosophy, that idea, just like this little Asian guy. And he sits in like, sometimes he's dressed as a monk, which it doesn't even match what he's doing. But anyway, sometimes he's dressed in street clothes, but he's sitting like cross-legged in front of like tea. It's all fake, but it doesn't matter because I actually stop and listen to what he's got to say. It has to say. It's not even he.
Yeah, right. I think that's some of the cool parts. I think we got to be careful. Intention matters to me, that we're not like deceiving people that this is somebody they could talk to or that
Right?
they're following. But I also love the creativity and love being able to do things you haven't done before. My
Yeah.
favorite one is have you seen the Yeti
Yeah.
video blogger?
Yeah.
That is awesome. This
Yeah. And that's the
gigantic
way to kind of
Bigfoot
keep it
walking
safe,
around with the
right?
selfie cam, like giving
Yes.
updates on his life and
Yeah,
stuff
and
and
like
tips.
I think that's
It's
kind of
amazing.
the best way to keep it safe, right? Is not make it a human. But this little Asian one totally is not being transparent or explainable, right? It's not saying, hey, I'm faking you out. It's asking people like, if you
we'll
are
get
like
there.
me, tell me what city you're in. And I'm like, but we're not like you because you're not a thing. Like you're not a real person. So I agree with you. I think there is, like you said, intentionality, but I also yes, be intentional, but also don't be afraid to just do something like that. Like just try it. But what I do like is like Pixar, you can go in and now create a Pixar version of yourself and let that tell all of your tips, tricks, and resources.
Yeah,
And
there's
go to
some
an
cartoon
LLM and
ones where
ask
you
it.
can make like your own Simpson episode
Yes.
and stuff and character and
Or
put yourself in
Muppets.
it
You could be
or
your own
write it and
Muppet.
stuff. Really cool. Now the last question is the larger one about humanity. And I know nobody knows. I think there is this like event horizon of super AGI or something that nobody can predict what happens after that. But if you had your best guess, what do you think humanity looks like within our lifetime, say maybe 30 years from now?
Yeah. I mean, I have the benefit of having been on Alexa 10 years ago and seeing how far we've come in 10 years, which is not very far. The technology, of course, has massively changed, but humanity is funny that way, right? Adoption is everything. You might remember the time when we launched, Google launched Google Lens, which today would do probably pretty well, but back then everyone's like, negative. Same with autonomous vehicles. One out of every 5 vehicles can completely be autonomous driving, but people choose not to turn it on. And now we've got this research that says of 95% of projects that are failing, the number one reason is because people won't use them. So I think there's some real interesting signals that actually says as good as technology will be, even in AGI has to be used by someone.
Yeah.
Someone has to engage that tool. It doesn't come in and become the CEO of a company. Like a human has to use it. And I think we're starting to see real, what do we call, like resistance or hesitancy? But Gartner has this hype cycle, and which we're at the top of right now. On the other side is like this trough of disillusionment, which is where everyone's like, wait, what are we doing? And I think we're just starting to see some glimmers of, wait, what does this do? Especially as we're watching companies, even if they're not actually firing people for this reason, they're saying we're laying off 40% of our workforce because of AI. I don't actually believe, I'm positive that AI is not doing the work of 40,000 or 40% of these people's companies, because it's
it seems like a plausible scapegoat instead of saying,
but it's a scapegoat.
We don't need these humans anymore. We're not hitting our revenue numbers.
Exactly. So my hope is that, that's why I love the podcast title, right? Human First, that my new book that's coming out, it's a sequel, if you will, and it's all about being human first and AI focused, that AI becomes a focus of how we leverage technology, but it's not AI first. Do you know how many companies right now are like, I'm an AI first company? I'm like, well, maybe, but then if you're not human first, no one will be there to pick up the pieces. And that's the reality, is that AI at the end of the day, it doesn't work by itself. It's not inherently amazing without a human to guide what it's supposed to do. Even the biggest models have failed when not given appropriate guidance from somebody who's it's like an entrepreneur. Our job, there's big problems out there. It's not until an entrepreneur picks up that problem and chooses to solve it for a specific customer that change happens. We change the world, but we do it through specificity. Cool. And models are the same way. And so, I actually see a much more optimistic, future, but I also see us actually not using AI as much as we might think we will be, right? I don't see it. I don't see, it's just like, what was it? Back to the Future, right? We don't see like hoverboards and flying cars. We thought we would by now, but we don't, not because the tech isn't there. We actually have the tech to do it. It's because humans don't want to do that. And I think we as humans, we have a lot to say in the future.
I love that answer. I agree with you. I think there is a larger spectrum than people think. It's like either going to be all sci-fi or no sci-fi.
Yes.
And it's really kind of a wide spectrum. Well, maybe we'll have some really cool stuff in like robotic surgery or other things and cool life-saving stuff because that's important to us. And then other things like the flying cars. We have flying cars. They're called helicopters. They're really loud and really dangerous.
Yeah.
So like we don't need all the cars.
But even imagine our kitchen, right? Like we could have right now. I was just at CES last year and we bought this kitchen like refrigerator, and it's got a screen. It can
The
detect all this
camera and all that stuff.
AI infused. So I think we will see AI infused kind of at a micro level. But yeah, I don't see us, I don't see a dystopian future. Let's just hope it's not in my lifetime.
We'll see how it goes. We've been talking with Noelle Russell. You can find her at noelle.ai. She has the I Love AI community, the book that we've been talking about, Scaling Responsible AI, the AI Leadership Institute, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Follow her on all of the channels as well. Noelle, anything else you can do to help us or we can do to help you?
Oh my gosh, no, this was a delight. And I just say, like, get out there and build something. Like, you'd be surprised how awesome you can build something by just starting with your words.
Love it. And for me, if you want to build scalable storytelling in your marketing, that's what we do at Avenue 9. We can interview your founder, your top salesperson, your best clients, use that as the contextual database to what I call create the concentrated orange juice that then we can water down with AI and spread it everywhere and repurpose on all of the channels. But we got to do that human first work of talking to your people. So if that sounds like something that would benefit your marketing, go to avenue9.com. Until next time, keep going, everybody. Have fun.